Hi everybody and welcome back to my War Games hobby channel. Alec here. It's been a while since I've posted anything on my channel, but I always said that unless I felt it was worth putting something on, I'm not going to be a regular poster, but now I've finally got something to tell you. Also, I've been a bit busy with family matters and I have another hobby that occupies me pretty much throughout the summer months. But as I say, I've finally got something which I can tell you about. And that is that I finally finished a project that I've been working on for the last year, maybe even longer, 18 months. Now, you all know, if you've watched my channel before, how much I enjoy the Muskets and Tomahawks set of rules. And I've got quite a large army of American War of Independence and also French and Indian wars to play with those rules. But a little while ago they released the supplement for the Napoleonic period. Now when I first found out that they were going to be doing that, it sort of got my interest straight away, because the Napoleonic period has always been my favourite period for wargaming and in fact studying historically. So I decided, right, I better start getting some figures together. I've never actually painted a 28mm Napoleonic army before. I have got a large 15mm army of French and the Russians as well, but I've never done 28s. But for skirmishing, obviously 28s are ideal. So I decided I would do a 28mm Napoleonic army. And then it's a case of, well, which one should I do? Again, if you watched my channel before, you know that in fact it was the Austrians I decided upon, because no one else had done them at the club at the time. I believe someone now has started doing some like me, and I just fancied them, to be honest. And so I started with them first, and I decided that I would base the army on the Battle of Wagram in 1809. The reason for that is, as you can see, if I zoom in a little bit closer to my line infantry, I do like the helmets that they used to wear up to 1809, and after that period they slowly got resupplied with the traditional sort of Napoleonic shako. But I decided I would stick to sort of the 1809 period, which is what I've done. So what's the army that I did in the end? You'll notice I've got 3 regiments of infantry, and they're all in 16s, which is pretty large. Normally in these rules, the smallest line infantry unit is 8, and it can be up to 12. But the Austrians in the rules have a national characteristic, which is if they're in big units, they can move a lot easier. I won't go through all the rules with you now, but the Austrians had big units anyway, so I decided I would create 3 units of line infantry. Then I've got 2 units of skirmishers, which instead of being 6s are 8s. And I've also got, as you can see, a unit of Jaegers armed with rifles. And then over the back there, you can see I've got 1 artillery piece, which I don't use very much in the rules. I don't think artillery necessarily work well in skirmish rules, but they're there if you do have a scenario where you're defending an artillery battery or something like that, then it's useful having 1. And then at the far end you can see I have a regiment of Uhlans, which the reason I chose Uhlans was, if you look at the book, this is a book I had of the Battle of Wagram in 1809, and if you look in there, the regiment that I've done, you see the pink facings. It's the 38th Regiment, okay, of Wartenbergs. And you'll see that the cavalry that were in that division with the Wartenbergers were the Uhlans. So that's the reason that I've done Uhlans for the support unit of the infantry. The reason I've gone for pink is I do like to have units, a few units, especially in the Napoleonic period, with pink facings. And a good friend of mine, sadly no longer with us, Mick Fuller, who's in fact started Farnborough War Game Society back in the 70s, We had a bit of a joke going, and whenever I did any army, you expected to find at least one unit with some sort of pink in the uniform somewhere, whether it's just be facings or whatever. So it became a bit of a sort of thing I had to stick to doing, and I decided that I must do pink in memory of Mick. That's why I've done the pink facings for the infantry, and they look really good too anyway. So Mick, if you are up there watching, mate, there you go. You'll be happy with that. 5 units there with pink in. So that's the Austrians, and obviously I think I'm pretty pleased with them actually. I'm not a brilliant painter, as I've explained to you in the past. I paint to a reasonable war game standard, and if you look at them, you know, they're okay. And I certainly do a reasonable enough job, but when compared to some of my friends at the club, they're very basic painting compared to what some people can do. We have a couple of guys at the club that paint absolutely fantastic figures, and I can't compete with that. I haven't got the ability or the time to do it. But what I do is to a reasonable war game standard. So there's my Austrians. Now the other thing then was, of course, I needed to do some French. Now, I didn't have to do this, of course, because there's a lot of guys at the club that have got Napoleonic armies, and if I fight one of those, they'll always prefer to use their own troops. But if I do have a game against someone that hasn't got an army, then it's best to have both sides. And I generally now, in most war game armies that I do, from a new set of rules, I generally do both sides. And there's my French. Now you can see it's similar. It's very similar in size. The infantry, there we are. I've got 5 regiments here. It doesn't matter how they could be 6 regiments of 8, but I've put the 2 front units of 12. That's the maximum they can be anyway. And then I've got 3 units behind of 8, and then I've got just 3 units of voltigeurs. These guys, so they're in 6s rather than the Austrian 8s. They can be bigger, but I decided to leave them at 6s, but I've made them sharpshooters, so they're pretty effective. Then again, I've got an artillery piece over here, and then you'll notice that the cavalry, I've got 2 units. So I did the lancers first, and then because they can't be as large as the Uhlans, which are can be units of 12, the maximum size you can have in a French cavalry unit is 8. I decided to do more cavalry. I also decided I'd paint just more lancers and have 2 units of 8 lancers. I would have some hussars, just because I like the look of hussars. And I tried to also pick a unit that was at Wagram, which this unit here, the 5th Hussars, was at Wagram. And you can see if I pick one up and bring it over a bit closer, they're wearing the police. It looks really nice, the white coat over the top of what would be a blue uniform, like the trousers. The blue is debatable as to whether that's the right blue or not. I've seen various ideas on that. Some of them are darker than the blue I've used, but the majority of the information that I've come across, it is a slightly lighter blue, so I've gone for that. Now, if you remember, I said that the Austrians were based on 1809, and it didn't really matter that the French had to be at 1809, but I did intend to sort of try and do that. But I made 2 mistakes, and I don't know whether you've already spotted. One's obvious and one isn't so much so. I just thought I'd bring this up because if I didn't, someone's bound to tell me, "Oi, you've made 2 mistakes there." Well, the first one is the first regiment that I bought for the French were the Lancers, and I decided I would, because in these rules Lancers are quite handy, and I'd already decided to do the Uhlans for the Austrians. I thought I would match them with French Lancers. But of course, I'm sure some of you are already sort of realising that there weren't French Lancers around in 1809. They weren't formed till a couple of years later. I think it was 1810 or 11 that they were formed. So really, if this is a Wagram French army, they shouldn't have lancers. So I just thought I'd point that out. The other small error that I did do was I've got a couple of drummers with the green livery. Okay, and again, that wasn't around in 1809. That came a couple of years later. Anyway, minor little things. It doesn't really matter to me anyway, but I thought I'd point it out. So there's my incomplete army, both sides. And you'll see from the army list, which I will put, in fact, if you look at it now, it's a pretty sizable army, isn't it? The French are slightly more in points, in 920 points, and the Austrians 871. If I did want to do an equally pointed army, I would just have to take a few figures away from the French infantry, or maybe not use the artillery, or less officers. You know, I've based up the entire army that I've got. I would rarely use them exactly as they are on that sheet. But if I did want a big game, and I would probably make sure I had 2 people aside to make it more playable. Because a normal game that I've found, certainly for an evening game, you want sort of about 500, maybe 600 points maximum. So 900, around 900 points aside is a bit ambitious. But with 2 people aside, you could do that. It would work quite well. So that's my entire army. They're all ready to go. I've had several games of Shakos and Bayonets, and they've been really enjoyable. I haven't used the whole army that you see, because literally I only finished them last week. The last French I did were the 5th Hussars. I finished those a couple of weeks ago, and then because I wanted to make the Austrian skirmishers slightly bigger, I had to order few extra figures, and I also decided to have some Jaegers to bring up the points a little bit, because the French had too many points more. So I've just done some giant Jaegers to support the rest of the infantry. So there we go. They look good, don't they? I'm very happy with them. I've really enjoyed this project actually, and it's nice to actually have a target to aim for. It was never going to be a thing I was going to do in a hurry. I started off, as I say, initially doing Austrians, and then I decided soon after I'd do French as well. I bought some of the French on eBay. They were based and undercoated, but they hadn't been painted. And then I just bought the rest, mainly from front rank. All the skirmishers, all the Voltigeurs are front rank figures, as are all the Austrian skirmishers and Jaegers. All the cavalry are front rank as well. I really like front rank figures. But the French infantry, I'm not sure where they're from, but they were the ones I bought on eBay, although I did add some more front rank figures to them. And the plastic line infantry are Perry plastics, which were great. I do like Perry plastics anyway. So there we are, a project that I didn't rush. I knew I would take my time. I can't paint as quickly as I used to. I also don't have the time to spend painting. Sometimes I go weeks without doing anything, and then I'd have a bit of a spurt and have a couple of hours for 2 or 3 days, and then I'd leave it again for a week. But anyway, over the last year or 18 months, I finally got them done. I've done a few other minor sort of things in between as well, which slowed it down. But there we are. They're finally finished. A project I thoroughly enjoyed. And I know I'm going to get years of pleasure out of those, playing Shakos and Bayonets. Yeah, so there we go, guys. It's about time I put something on YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at the figures that I've been painting. And hopefully I'll have a game, maybe with the whole lot. I don't know. I won't record the whole game. But what I will do is, if I do that, I'll record the highlights and let you know how they get on. Right, in the meantime, look after yourself, enjoy your wargaming, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.